Bobby comes in from California, and she says that California is facing the largest cash flow problem in the state's history, and it's been leaked out today that California needs to borrow billions, in plural, with a B, for short-term loans that are due in July. Mr. Chapman, what's this going to do to California if they can't get this cash flow borrowing to help?
Well, I do think they'll get the cash, and they'll have to pay higher amounts of money for it. They'll have to pay more interest. But California is essentially bankrupt. And the major problem is there's too many people who live there that don't pay taxes, whether state or federal or anything. And they use the services, and the people who do pay taxes have to pay for that. And if you live there, you know the story. I don't have to tell you. It's dreadful. And it's not going to get better. It's going to get worse. And the current administration in Washington wants to give amnesty to the illegal aliens, which are really causing the problem. And not that they're bad people or anything. Most of them are very nice. The problem is they really shouldn't be there, because if you did what they're doing in the United States, in Mexico or Salvador or Panama or Argentina, they'd throw you out of the country real fast. And so that is the problem there. And until they clear that problem up, that state is going bankrupt because they don't have a big enough tax base to carry them.
Mr. Chapman, from what I can hear, what I hear here is a recipe for a calamity that's going to turn California into the first inter-civil war within a state. This bothers me. At the same time, I'm seeing the military being told we as wives, where we will have to go and buy food on a military base, and that there is base housing being made available more and more available to those of us that have lived in our own homes, because they feel that we may end up living in a catastrophic event where the illegal aliens are going to be running roost in a possible interstate civil war. Mr. Chapman, I'm scared, and I don't know what to do as the wife of an officer in the United States Marine Corps. What can I do?
Well, make sure that you have your own weapons at home and you can use them. And if you're on the base, I would assume that would afford you some protection. In fact, maybe a lot of protection. I think the people who live in the bigger cities, like Los Angeles and the Long Beach area, incidentally, I lived in California for 36 years, so I know where all of you live there, because 36 years is a long time. There's not going to really be any place to hide once that thing blows up. And on top of that, in the LA Basin, there's 250,000 plus gang members who are all criminals. And they're armed as well as the military is. And so it presents a real problem. It's one of the reasons I left there. And I moved to Florida, which didn't have that problem. And since then I've moved on. Because I'm not very popular with the government. but anyway, just do what you can to protect yourself. I mean, there's only so much you can do, and everybody is frightened these days, and it's not going to get better. It's going to get worse, unfortunately.
Mr. Chapman, this is from Joe in New York. The past 6 months, China reserves grew by a monthly average of $8 billion versus $38 billion for the entire year of 2007. China it's been released now that China purchased $4.6 billion worth of U.S. Treasury securities just in February, and another 4.1 is being hinted at for the month of April. Mr. Chapman, why are they buying U.S. Treasuries when they've just got U.S. dollars? When they have just got U.S. dollars? Oh, okay. When they have U.S. dollars, are they just trying to find some place to put their money?
Yes, and I think to some extent they're cooperating with the U.S. government. If you get $8 billion coming in and you spend $2 or $3 or $4 billion on U.S. paper, that's not a lot of money because they're probably sitting on $1.3 trillion in dollars. I don't know what the exact figure is, but it's very large. So it's not important in the scheme of things to them. It is to the United States government because they got to come up with $2.8 billion every day. That figure changes every day, too. It can be anywhere between 1.6 and 3.2. But on average, that's about what it is. And so they need that money coming in. And because it wasn't coming in, particularly in the month of February, the Federal Reserve announced that they were going to spend $300 billion that they didn't have to buy U.S. Treasury paper. And how they do that is they make money out of nothing. And they do that on a balance sheet. And they credit the account of the U.S. Treasury, which bolts out and spends that money, and they debit their own books, which means nothing. And it's called monetizing debt. And when that money goes into the economy, it's hot, and it causes inflation. And that's how they're servicing that problem, and that problem's going to get worse. Either that or interest rates have to rise. But if interest rates rise, what are they going to do with those inventory of commercial and residential homes that they can't get rid of? I mean, you talk about being between the rock and the hard place. There's no way out of this. You know, I've been writing about this for almost 50 years, and, you know, my predictions have been spot on all the way, and particularly in the last 10 years. These people are trapped in Washington and on Wall Street and in banking. They went too far with this thing. They were too greedy. And the whole thing's going to come falling apart, whether it's 6 months from now or 3.5 years from now. It is going to happen.
Bob from Vermont comes in and says, if China were to sell its massive treasury holdings, would the United States interest rate just astronomically go up to what the Germans had in 1920?
Absolutely. But the Chinese are not dumb people. They're not going to do that because they'd be injuring themselves. What they want to do is buy SDRs and drop 35% of their dollars and take SDRs in exchange, or perhaps they want to buy gold. They've been buying massive amounts of copper to get rid of dollars. They've been buying major amounts of soybeans. That's why copper went from $1.36 a pound to $2.22 here the other day, about a 50% increase from the bottom. Now, mind you, copper was over $4 previously, so it's still off 50% from its high. And soybeans, you know, they have a massive population, so better they be able to feed the people and keep them shut up and not rebellious because at least they can eat. And so that's what they're spending dollars on, and they're buying mineral concessions all over the world and many, many other things. And they're trying to lay off those dollars without disrupting the system. So I don't see them dumping them.
Two questions from Lisa in Seattle. Mr. Chapman, I've been reading in several publications that the government is telling us the domestic investors are buying over half of the U.S. Treasuries. But what I'm hearing today is you or Drew are hinting that the Chinese are buying most of the U.S. Treasury holdings. What's the real truth?
Well, previously the Chinese were very large buyers. And then 3-4 years ago, previous to that, the Japanese were. Now, the Chinese have started to slow down precipitously. The big buyers in treasuries today are out of London, and London represents the financial interest of the oil-producing states in the Gulf in the Middle East. So they continue to be large buyers, and in return, Britain and the United States protect them so that they won't have revolutions in their countries, because most of them are dictators and formerly thieves and bandits, I may add. And also, the second largest buyers are out of Cayman. No, the Cayman Islands are a offshore tax haven, and probably 80% of hedge funds are housed there. And so they do a lot of buying of treasuries. And I also have suspected for some years that the U.S. Treasury and the Federal Reserve have accounts over there where they manipulate the interest rate market. I can't prove that because it's another state secret. And so we don't have a need to know that they're rigging the system in their own behalf for their own people so they can get richer and richer.